Would you like to live on Mars? It's been a dream of humanity for many years. But what if we could make this dream a reality by terraforming the planet, which is quite possible if we put our mind to it? We know that Mars is very different from Earth. The most obvious difference is its color, which comes from the high amounts of iron oxide or rust on its surface. If we could somehow remove all that rust, would we be able to turn Mars into a planet more like our own? What are the chances of terraforming the planet, and what does science say about it? Keep watching to find out. Terraforming is an engineering project on an interplanetary scale that will require millennia to complete. The process of making Mars more Earth-like involves several steps. We need to warm up the planet so that water can exist in liquid form, put an atmosphere on it so we can breathe and protect us from cosmic radiation, and finally, put an ozone layer on it so that the sun's ultraviolet rays don't kill us. It's difficult to imagine how we might achieve any of this, but not impossible. In 2015, researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology proposed a bold plan to warm Mars by using a swarm of low-cost spacecraft to put mirrors around the planet and reflect sunlight onto the frozen poles. The plan calls for launching thousands of lightweight mirrors into space, each about the size of a soccer field. These mirrors would then be arranged in a loose circle around the planet to reflect sunlight back down onto the frozen North and South poles. As the ice melted, the water would flow downhill, creating large artificial lakes. Eventually, the artificial lakes would expand to cover much of the planet's surface and would contain enough water to sustain vast oceans. The project would take several centuries to complete, but in the end, it would transform Mars into a planet with a liquid water ocean similar to Earth's. However, there's a small problem. The whole thing will require about 1 million tons of material, most of which would have to be mined on Mars once we set up a permanent human presence there. Another problem is that the process would take centuries to complete, which raises the question, should we do it? In the end, we believe that terraforming Mars wouldn't be worth the effort. Mars may not be suitable for humans without major changes. We may never know why the planet stopped being hospitable to life. Perhaps there was a cataclysmic event long ago that destroyed the atmosphere, or the core cooled and the magnetic field disappeared. Whatever happened, we're unlikely to ever reverse the process and recreate a natural Martian ecosystem. But this doesn't mean we can't create a human ecosystem on Mars. The truth is that scientists have been arguing about whether or not we should attempt to terraform Mars for decades. There are strong arguments on both sides. On the one hand, terraforming would allow us to establish a self-sustaining colony on another world. We could grow crops, raise animals, and live comfortably on Mars. This would be an incredible achievement and would open up new possibilities for humanity. On the other hand, terraforming would also be extremely dangerous. We could inadvertently destroy the planet's ecology and environment, and even if we did it right, there's no guarantee that we would be able to create a sustainable habitat for ourselves. It is possible that we would simply end up contaminating Mars with our own DNA and making it uninhabitable for any life that might have existed there. In the end, the decision of whether or not to terraform Mars is a moral and ethical one. We need to carefully consider the risks and benefits before making a decision. We can use computer models to simulate various terraforming scenarios and study the potential consequences. But ultimately, the decision of whether or not to terraform Mars is up to us. Mars has a thin atmosphere, but it is enough for a human to survive if they be protected from the solar wind by a shelter or spacesuit. The pressure is about 1% of that on Earth, but that's still enough to prevent our blood from boiling like it would on a spaceship. Mars is cold, though, with an average surface temperature of -63 degrees Celsius. That's not quite as cold as Antarctica, but it's close. Humans could probably survive on Mars if we provided them with shelter and supplies. However, we would need to generate our own oxygen using technologies such as electrolysis of hydrogen or the Sabatier process. We would also need to grow food using hydroponics or other artificial methods. So while it might be possible for humans to survive on Mars, it would be a challenge. Terraforming Mars would require massive engineering projects, including the construction of giant mirrors to focus sunlight on the planet's frozen poles, melting them and releasing water vapor into the atmosphere. We would also need to build massive greenhouses to create a breathable atmosphere and regulate the climate. It's hard to imagine how we could accomplish such massive engineering projects on Mars, but it's not impossible. With enough time, effort, and resources, we could terraform Mars into a planet that is habitable for humans. But is it really necessary? We think the answer is probably no. Humans are adaptable creatures and we can survive in a wide range of environments. We've already built habitats on Earth that can support life in environments that would normally be hostile to humans, such as deep under the sea or inside volcanoes. We could probably do the same thing on Mars. Why bother terraforming the planet when we can simply build habitats that allow us to survive on it as it is? This may seem like a disappointing answer, but it's probably realistic. Terraforming Mars would be a monumental task, and there's no guarantee that it would work. We could end up destroying the planet in the process, or worse, contaminating it with our own DNA and preventing any native life from ever evolving. But if we simply build habitats on Mars and learn to live on the planet as it is, we'll be able to explore and learn about this fascinating world without causing any harm to it. If you want to see what's happening on Mars right now, you can check out the NASA website where they have a live feed of the Curiosity rover as it explores the surface of the red planet. You can also check out the website for the latest news and discoveries about Mars from around the world. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on all our latest videos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. We understand that some people might not be comfortable with the idea of altering another planet, even if it could potentially benefit humanity. If terraforming goes wrong, it could have catastrophic consequences for both Mars and Earth. For example, if we released greenhouse gases into the Martian atmosphere without fully understanding their effects, we could end up making the planet even more inhospitable than it is now. Or if we bring back Martian soil or rocks to Earth, we could inadvertently introduce new diseases or contaminants to our planet. That's why some scientists argue that we should approach terraforming Mars with caution. They believe that we should only proceed with terraforming if we have developed effective ways to control the process and minimize the risks. They also argue that we should only terraform Mars if it's absolutely necessary. If we can find other ways to meet our energy needs or find other planets that are more suitable for human habitation, we should pursue those options first. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to terraform Mars is a complex one that involves weighing the potential benefits against the risks. It is a decision that should be made by an international body of experts after careful consideration of all the ethical, environmental, and safety concerns. In recent years, there has been a growing movement to explore the possibility of terraforming Mars. This is largely due to the fact that Mars is seen as a potential candidate for human colonization. The planet has a number of features that make it potentially habitable for humans, including its proximity to Earth, its size, and its atmosphere. However, there are also a number of challenges that stand in the way of terraforming Mars. These include the planet's thin atmosphere, its lack of a global magnetic field, and its relatively low temperatures. Despite these challenges, many scientists and engineers believe that it is possible to terraform Mars and make it habitable for humans. One of the main arguments in favor of terraforming Mars is that it would provide us with a backup plan for humanity. If something were to happen to Earth, such as a large asteroid impact or a supervolcanic eruption, a self-sustaining colony on Mars could provide a refuge for humans. Additionally, terraforming Mars would open up new possibilities for scientific research. By studying the planet's geology, atmosphere, and climate, we could learn more about the history of our solar system and the formation of planets. We could also test new technologies and engineering techniques on Mars that could then be applied to other planets or moons in our solar system. Of course, terraforming Mars would not be without its risks. The planet is currently home to a variety of organic molecules and microorganisms, and we don't know what kind of impact our terraforming efforts would have on these organisms. Additionally, there is always the risk that something could go wrong during the terraforming process and render the planet stuck in an undesirable state. Nevertheless, the potential benefits of terraforming Mars outweigh the risks in our opinion. The planet is largely lifeless, and any native organisms are likely to be microscopic in size. As such, we don't believe that we would cause any significant ecological damage by terraforming the planet. Additionally, we can always reverse the terraforming process if something goes wrong. While this would obviously be a last resort, it is an option if necessary. Overall, we believe that terraforming Mars is a worthy endeavor. The potential benefits to humanity far outweigh the risks, and the knowledge that we would gain from studying the planet would be invaluable. If we're able to successfully terraform Mars, it would be one of the greatest achievements in human history.